to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Hot 97, we got a little bit of time right now. We're going to put this in two parts, but we wanted to get Jumaane Williams on. Laura, you don't mind if we preempt flashing lights to get to the city business?
Absolutely not. This is something we all kind of want answers on, right? We need some clarity, so it's important that we have Jumaane Williams here to break it all down for us.
All right, on a national level, everybody knows about Defund the Police and the work that the activists and demonstrators have been trying to get done with not just reallocating money from the police, but actually investing in new ways to keep our city safe and uplift our communities. Here in New York City, specifically with COVID-19, reports came in some weeks ago that we would be billions of dollars short, and the budget had already been cut by $8 billion. We got word this morning after City Council, Mayor, and everybody at City Hall got together over the budget that $1 billion would be moved away from the NYPD and invested in other areas. Jumaane Williams, who is a New York City public advocate, is now threatening to block the budget process because he is not satisfied with how this budget is playing out. And he thinks this is some sort of three-card Monte, you know, just moving money around but not actually doing the work that the community is asking to be done. Jumaane, are you with us?
I'm with you. Peace and blessings.
Peace. Hopefully I set that up right, but am I capturing the sentiment of most of how you're feeling?
Yeah, you definitely captured the sentiment, and I appreciate that. You know, there's a lot of things in that budget that's problematic, and you mentioned some of them. You did mention some of the, you know, it's funny money that is not really doing what people wanted. The most egregious probably is about $150 million that actually is not even being saved at all. It's not being moved. It's not being saved. It's just misinformation.
So let's and because the budget process is complicated, let's focus on that $150 million, because is that the crux of your main issue?
No. So that's the thing. There's a lot of issues that I disagree with.
Okay.
But to use the power that I have, I wouldn't do it just for that. The main problem is this. The people have clearly said we wanted to reimagine what public safety is. We have had discussions about what was restored, and I want to thank the city council because they did a decent job, and I want to of restoring things. I want to be clear. So we're talking about restorations of things that should never been cut. And even in those restorations where we restored 35,000 summer youth jobs, we cut 40,000 summer youth jobs. Even where we restored guidance counselors, like in the Good Shepherd program, we are saying that we can't hire any additional guidance counselors. We can't hire any additional nurses, any additional teachers. We're cutting the oncology department in Kings County Hospital. We're cutting the Fair Affairs program, except for one place. There is one area where we said we have to hire additional resources, and that's the police department. So no matter where you stand and where you stood in the defund, how much to fund, you know, I would support a defund. But the crux of my problem is, how can we tell people that the only thing we need in this time of need, in this moment, is over 1,000 new police officers? That is absurd. That makes no sense.
But they masked it, right, Jumaane? Because they made it sound like it sounds like they're not going to hire 1,100 police officers.
It sounds like the recruits got canceled.
1,100. Right. That's how they made it look.
Recruits got canceled.
So what they don't tell you is that every year, and this year coming up, there's 4 new classes. They canceled 1, maybe 2. That means 2 or 3 are still moving forward. And the question is, what could that money be used for? And so we can't tell the city that we're reimagining public safety where we're not. And so they use there's about 60-something percent of people saying they didn't support defund the police. And what I keep telling people is those same people, if you ask them, should we defund our Department of Health? Should we defund our Department of Education? They will say no.
And we don't. Effectively, the budget that we're seeing right now is defunding
yes,
the Department of Health. It is defunding the Department of Education.
Yes.
Yes, that is the crux of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. Because we are doing the exact opposite of what people asked us to do. And we are sending police as the only response to what we know is coming and we see happening in this rise of crimes that was going to happen based on the situation we're in right now. And our entire nation is having a conversation about reimagining public safety. And this city should be in the leadership position of that discussion. But we have had a mayor that's failed time and time again, and he failed thoroughly here. He didn't even set a context to have that discussion. And we should all be disappointed, and I'm actually ashamed of what he presented to this council to have to vote on.
And so what happens now?
And so the budget passed. Now there is a clear authority in the charter that says the public advocate has to sign the tax warrants. One of two people, the city clerk and myself, has to sign the tax warrants in order for the city to collect taxes. As a matter of fact, I received the tax warrants for my signature right after the budget passed. And I've said I'm not going to sign those tax warrants unless we have a hiring freeze. And so the city said we're putting a hiring freeze on every city agency except the police department. And we either have a hiring freeze or we don't. And I said we have to simply commit to a just transition from the way our school safety is set up now to a restorative justice model. So I put it in a place where everybody can grab it. Not, some discussions that are happening across the city and state that are more complicated. Those two things are pretty basic. And I'm saying that the next tax bills that come out, because the ones for this current quarter are already out, but the next ones, we believe that the city will not be able to collect. And that's on the mayor.
So it's being framed publicly already, not surprisingly, in the New York Post, as this cut is a smack in the face of NYPD. So not only are you saying that this was ineffective in changing the way policing is being done, but the perception publicly that's going to be presented is that something was really done.
So this is and also what that does is that speaks to what many people have been saying about de Blasio is, in effect, it's a lose-lose because you're not picking a side here. So you got people who are supportive of the NYPD seeing a number, $1 billion has moved away from the NYPD, saying it's a smack in the face. And then you have people looking under the hood of Jumaane Williams and other activists saying, yeah, but why are you defunding education, defunding hospitals, and adding funds and hiring more officers? Either it's going to be a freeze, and it's a freeze, and we are also going to invest in new ways of safety with this money, or it's not. This mushy middle, I think, is the problem, right, Jumaane?
That very much is the problem, especially for this mayor who campaigned and said that they were going to do different things differently. Right now, when we think of the mayors who were bad on this issue, we're going to have to think of Mike Bloomberg, Rudy Giuliani, and Bill de Blasio. And that's a terrible trio to be a part of, but he's put himself there in ways that are unimagimaginable.
You really,
right?
You know how to get his goat, Jumaane. You know how to
threw him you
really know how to line him up, boy.
I mean, but it's the truth, and he can say whatever he wants. But in the times of crisis, we see who people really are, and he came in a wave of dealing with the abuse of stop, question, and frisk. And I will be honest, he was the last person to support my bills when we were dealing with those issues. And I've never even talked about that publicly. But it's the truth. And so maybe I should have known back then that this is the type of mayor that he would have been. And all we're saying, and I try to put it always as simple as possible. If we have to make cuts and people have to lose their jobs, which I don't think anyone should, because in an economy like this, unemployment is the worst, then the NYPD can't be sacrosanct. They can't be left out. And if we are also saying that we are going to be a freeze and we can't hire anybody, we can't have any additional resources, then NYPD can't be golden. And that's something that everybody should be able to grab onto, because we are saying, he's going to try to say we use money to invest to other places, and we didn't. We restored cuts that were horrendous and should never have been proposed. The only people that got additional resources are the NYPD.
Well,
Kings County.
I think what you're saying sounds clear and fair, right? Because, as people who are not, in the weeds with it like yourself, I see $1 billion moved away from the NYPD, moved into things. I think, okay, we've defunded. You're saying, no, we haven't. We just refunded things that were already cut in a climate where $8 billion was already lost. I challenge you, Jumaane, and say, where would the new money come from, if there was any?
So there's a few things here. One, I just want to be clear. At minimum, we shouldn't be putting 1,000 new officers. That money itself could have gone to further restore or add on to the things that we know bring forth public safety, whether it's guidance counselors, teachers, or the gun violence programs that we know have been working. There are three places where we do need additional funding. We do need federal relief. That's just absolute truth. And so they're right about that. We do need the state to do two things. One is the governor refuses to look at revenue raising options. He just doesn't want to do it. I guess this is friends, people who donate, and he doesn't want to look at millionaires and billionaires and raise revenue there for fair taxation on those folks. And the third is they have to give the city the ability to long-term borrow. And the mayor is a terrible messenger right now, but he's correct on this. We did it during right after 9/11, and we're almost finished paying it off. Short-term borrowing is where we should be concerned, but long-term borrowing is a tool that we have to use right now. And I understand there has to be constraints and controls, but in order to do what we need to do and not further cut the social network, those are the three things that we have to have. I'm just into using all the tools that we have. And when we don't do that, it is very frustrating because I don't believe that the people who are talking then have the more high ground to have the conversation.
Was anything about this budget something that could lead to better policing, to changing the systemic problems we've seen with the NYPD?
The problem is, and again, I want to give the council credit here. There are things that they really fought. They fought for just the bare minimum of stuff, and the mayor set that up. The problem is the mayor is horrible at this conversation. We should be able to push this conversation forward so people are not viewing it as people saying simply anti-police. Every movement is anti-police, anti-police. But the mayor is terrible here. He keeps setting up the framework for that because he's not providing the proper leadership. What we all should be saying is, yes, law enforcement is a necessary part of the public safety discussion, but it can't be the only part of the public safety discussion. Why are we defunding these other agencies when we are increasing the headcount of the NYPD? And what they're going to say is, oh, there's attrition in the NYPD, and that's why we have to put those 1,000 officers. There's attrition everywhere. There's attrition in every agency. And so why are we not doing that for all of the agencies? But this mayor simply inept, it seems, to push this conversation forward. And that's a terrible position for this city to be in, because as we mentioned, crime and gun violence is going up. We can't ignore that. But we have to be honest about the story behind the numbers. Because if we're not honest about that story, we're going to have a dishonest response. And that dishonest response is going to be problematic. A police officer on every corner is not going to aid the way we think it is because of what we're going through right now, which is a global pandemic and depression-like economics. And when you combine all those things, we know what happens.
Jumaane Williams, moving forward, the only way to get this budget signed by you is what?
So the only way that I am going to sign the tax warrants, which will feel the effect in several months when they have to collect the taxes again, is for there to be a simple all across-the-board hiring freeze, which includes you just don't bring on 1,000 new officers, and for the administration to commit to a just transition on the system of safety we have in the schools to restorative justice. There are 5,500 school safety agents that used to report to the NYPD. Now they're reporting to the Department of Education, but that in and of itself is not what we need. We also don't want to encourage firing 5,500 primarily Black and brown people, primarily women, which is a real discussion, but we have to continue to uplift the voices and experiences of our young people and help them lead us in a discussion of restorative justice. And those two things are the basic minimum. And the fact that I have to use this tactic for the basic minimum shows a failure of the leadership of this mayor.
Jumaane, thank you for your time this morning, man.
Thanks, Jumaane.
Thank you, man.
And we'll
Appreciate y'all.
hopefully hear from you later on today. You guys are going back to City Hall.
I'll be going to check out, see what's going on. I appreciate all the Occupy City Hall folks. As the first elected to endorse Occupy Wall Street, it's great to see that spirit and energy even stronger.
There it is. Jumaane Williams, thank you so much.
Peace and
Jumaane.
blessings. Cool.